Welcome to Shut Up and Say Something. I am your host and creator of the show, Deedre Daniel. And today I am speaking with McManus Woodend, who is the GEICO Caveman. Little bit of a disclaimer. There were other cavemen, but he is the one and only caveman to me. And throughout this podcast, I'm going to refer to him as the caveman.
I'll accept it.
You'll accept it? Okay.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about how he became the caveman, among other interesting things. This podcast is all about how to have a more fascinating and interesting life. And we're learning how to do that one interesting conversation at a time. We try to stay away from politics, religion, and the ad nauseum topic du jour. Every once in a while, they creep in a little bit, but then we creep back out and talk about something else instead. Pretty much anything else is fair game. Now, I met McManus in May of 2009. And the reason why I know that is because that was my birthday weekend. And I always try to get out and about and do new things, meet new people. And I scored a free ticket to the Indianapolis 500. I was the director of partnership marketing at GEICO, and GEICO was sponsoring that race. And so even though that wasn't my division, I did get to take advantage of some of the perks. So I had pit passes and all kinds of behind the scenes access and all that. And I walked into the trailer where they were applying the makeup on the caveman. And that's how I met McManus. And we instantly loved each other. I just thought, this guy is fantastic. And we've been great friends ever since. Although I got to say, every once in a while we haven't talked. It's been a while. It's been a while since I've seen you.
I'm just a really busy guy all the time. And, you know, you have absolutely nothing going on in your life consistently. So to be perfectly honest with you, it's on you. And I mean, it took you creating a podcast and having 5 guests before me to want to hang out. So I appreciate the fact that you got the practice of wanting to hang out with me in a podcast.
Yeah.
Truth
hurts. Yeah, truth hurts. Okay. Well, I wanted to have you on the show because I love your story about how you became the GEICO Caveman. And there was so much scrappiness behind it. And I know there are a lot of people that want to do interesting things. And there's a recipe. There really is. There's a lot of grit. And I thought you could share that story with everybody.
It was a very, very strange story. I never really saw myself becoming any sort of actor or performer in any sort of legitimate sense. I always just thought I was going to be an amateur idiot in public for my entire life and not make a career out of it. And then all of a sudden, when I was working at the career development department at Full Sail University, I was on the Virginia Film Office website because part of my job as the film industry outreach liaison was to go wherever I could to find opportunities for graduates of Full Sail. And one of the things was to go on to film office websites all over the US to see what productions were happening. So cut to me being on the Virginia Film Office website looking for productions that were going on in Virginia at the time. And I don't know why. I just got a wild hair to scroll down and look at the casting notices because sometimes people mislabel things. And I saw the strangest, absolutely weirdest headline I've ever seen for a post. And it literally said, "Do you want to be a caveman?" ? There's no way this is legit. Absolutely no way. So I kept reading, and sure enough, they were looking for the next GEICO Caveman. And this was 2008, and the first spots had, I think, come out in 2004, if I'm not mistaken. You know, so it was very much deeply ingrained in pop culture. And it was just after the ill-fated series that ABC put out. I was just kind of like, that's weird that they're still looking for a caveman, for one. Number two, why wouldn't they just go to Second City or the Groundlings or UCB, any of the improv places on any night, go and just say, okay, that's our caveman. So that was number two. And then number three, I would like to be the GEICO Caveman. That sounds like that would be fun. I put together the world's worst acting resume that included special skills as a Rain Man-like knowledge of film and sports trivia, which is true, and we can talk about that later, and interpretive dance, which is also true. And then instead of just a normal actor headshot, I decided that it would be great if I did a jumping jack in midair. That was the shot. So I sent all of these things up, had some encouragement from some of my friends at the time. And I just was like, there's no way. And I sent them on a Sunday late night. And by Monday at noon, I got a phone call. And they're like, hey, this is casting from GEICO. Are you serious? And I said, I'm serious if you're serious. And if you're calling me, that means that you're serious. So yes, I am indeed serious. Sure enough, they said, okay, if you're serious, the audition's on Wednesday in Baltimore. We'll see you then. What time do you want? And that gave me 2 days to out of pocket pay for a plane ticket from Orlando up to Baltimore, and then find my way up to Timonium. If any of you are familiar with the area that are listening. Yeah.
That sounds like out in the middle of nowhere.
It pretty much is. I would say about a 45-minute train ride from the airport all the way up to the wonderful town of Timonium.
They didn't pay to fly you up there, put you in a hotel, nothing. And you thought, all right, I got to put all this money up front and travel to a place I've never heard of to audition.
Yeah. No. Or to be abducted, honestly, right. I hadn't, because again, I mean, it was a few steps up from Craigslist, but nonetheless, things could have gone sideways if it wasn't legitimate. I took the leap of faith, and between those days, I created a character bio for my caveman because I wanted them to take me seriously. Because another fun part of my resume, I submitted web experience. One of the videos was me dancing with a belly dancer at a Greek restaurant that happened like a couple months before. And I was completely sober when I did it. So I was like, okay, this is a really good example of just what kind of a public idiot I am. And sure enough, when we were auditioning, the tape broke because this was back in the mini DV days. The tape broke, so they had to stop and reload. And sure enough, they pulled that up and said, wow, how drunk were you? I said, I was completely sober. And they said, oh, okay, we're dealing with a real idiot here. Before I went into the audition, I handed them the character bio, and the casting agent was like, what's this? And I said, this is the caveman that I'm going to play. And it had a breakdown of like education, likes, dislikes, all that kind of stuff. I gave it to her, and she looked at me and she says, I've been doing this for 20 plus years. No one has ever gone into an audition with a character bio. And then I went into the audition. She told me to be in character the minute I walked in the door. So I was in character. The GEICO folks and the folks from DCP started to ask me questions, and I started to answer them in character. The funny thing was, they were asking me as McManus questions, not me as the caveman questions. So once it was probably about 5 or 6 questions into it, I was like, wait. So you're legitimately asking me these questions? They're like, yeah. And I was like, oh, okay, because every one of them is a lie because I'm answering them in character. So they're like, oh my God. Okay. So they. Do
you remember some of the questions? Hold on. Do you remember some of the questions and how you answered them?
I do remember one thing, a mock interview during like a halftime show or something like that. And the question was, oh, so are you going to, what are you going to just go back to your cave after you're done with this interview? And then I just riffed off of that. I was like, yeah, if my cave is a 3-bed, 2-bath condo on the water that's smart wired, and then yes, absolutely. And then no, actually, I'm just going to go under an underpass and hang out with all the other hobos and ne'er-do-wells and all that kind of stuff. Don Sherrill, who I worked with and who essentially cast me for the role, he said that he knew that I was the guy when I used the word ne'er-do-well in my audition. There you go. It helps to have a superfluous vocabulary.
Yeah, well, so already it's a lesson in grit. It's a lesson in taking chances and also being well read.
Grit and grammar should be a chapter in an autobiography that I'll never write.
It's a great title. Yeah.
Mhm.
You didn't finish your story. Kind of went on a little tangent. So you went to this audition.
I like tangents. Went to the audition, auditioned. They said, "Thank you. We'll be in touch." I thought nothing of it because, again, in my mind, I was just going to use this as a story whenever I was at a business meeting or at a bar with friends. And I was just going to be the guy who auditioned to be the GEICO Caveman. 3 months went past, and apparently they auditioned close to 1,000 people, is what the mythical number rose to at some point. They auditioned all of those people, and they knocked it down to 6. So I had to go back up to Baltimore again on my own dime to go on audition. And I walked into the audition, and the other 5 actors, they were all sitting down. They were all reading something, and they were all dressed in this very fancy way. It was a black suit with a white French collared button down dress shirt. And they all had their dress shirt unbuttoned, like 3 or 4 buttons, so that their chest was exposed. But I distinctly remember none of them having chest hair. So I thought that was a really weird thing because, you know, if I'm trying to put the image of what the caveman is and was, it's that they're hairy. So if I go in there like clean shaven, that would look weird, like from the jump. I wouldn't get that image. So I go in there and I'm wearing ratty Adidas sneakers, jeans, a cowboy button-up, snap button shirt, and a corduroy sport coat. And I'm like, I walk into that room and I'm like, I either really have this or I really don't. And,
right.
And then I asked, well, what are you guys reading? And they're like, oh, well, these are sides. I was like, oh, I didn't get those. So apparently we had to memorize a commercial. But fortunately, and I don't think I ever told anyone this, but it was a commercial that was already out. And I had seen that commercial so much that I had memorized the lines. When I saw that it was the commercial, I was like, I think I might have this. And sure enough, went in there, nailed the audition. And that next week they said, you've got the role.
I love it. Great job coming in with your own flair, your own personality.
Yeah. When you really try to go to a place that isn't comfortable or doesn't work or doesn't feel right, I think that reads very easily in everyday life, let alone on the camera, which has far more scrutiny than a traditional conversation. Going into that, I was like, okay, you know, I'm just going to do my thing.
And I think your corduroy jacket, that's like your favorite jacket. I've seen you wear it many times.
It was a staple of the time for sure. I mean, I think I wore that thing regardless of living in Florida. I would still wear it to work every day. So
yeah,
it was, you know, it needed to get retired after a while.
Well, and I'm sure the other actors went in there with outfits on that felt stiff and uncomfortable, and you're walking in there with something that you loved and felt comfortable in, and then that also probably helped with the confidence in the audition, I would think.
I like to think so. You know, they all looked like they were interviewing for a maitre d' position at a really posh restaurant, and I just looked like a goofy guy who was going to go in and do goofy stuff when asked. And
well, you're a very good dancer. And I know this for a fact because you and I went clubbing in Orlando probably about a month or so after I met you. And we already made plans to go. And on the way there, they announced Michael Jackson had died. And all of the nightclubs were playing Michael Jackson music.
That's right.
And yeah. And anytime I tell people that story, I'm like, I went clubbing with the Caveman and we danced the night away to Michael Jackson. That was a story that people would smile to. And then now if I say that, they just, you know, their faces fall and they just look at me funny. And I think, shoot, do I need to cut out the Michael Jackson part because of the whole Leaving Neverland, you know, documentary? I mean, what do you do? I mean,
no, I was just going to say, that's a very, very tough thing to even, talk about now, because his music still gets played. He's still
yeah.
beloved by so many people. It's such a difficult thing. I love the music. I don't know the man when it comes to the amount of survivors that have said what they've said in terms of just how things happened and what happened. You really need to give credence to those stories. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, at the time, yeah, as you're building that story for the repertoire, that's a really fascinating moment and factoid. Absolutely. I totally remember that night where, everyone was just dancing to, I mean, it was just wall to wall. MJ.
Right. Everyone was just completely just dancing and dancing, just loving all of the Michael Jackson songs. And I'm sure that was happening worldwide,
No,
you know.
absolutely. Absolutely.
And even now there'll be I'll say to Alexa, hey, play Stevie Wonder and similar artists, and within 2 songs it's a Michael Jackson song.
Mhm.
And the other day I looked at my husband, like, we need to say thumbs down, right? Is it? Yeah, that's what we're supposed to do, right? I mean,
Yeah.
this is, he died before he could really defend himself. But at the same time, like all these stories that come through, you're like, oh, that's not good. So I'm like, thumbs down, Alexa, thumbs
Yeah.
down.
Again, the amount of stories and the amount of detail within those stories, you have to consider them. And
Yeah.
that brings into the question of, separating the art from the artists. It's a really sticky subject, because I think a lot of it depends on just how much that artist meant to you,
Hmm.
and how much you're willing to, as the consumer of that art, for lack of a better term, or the appreciator of that art, how much you're willing to sacrifice, maybe those touchstone moments where the experience that we had, where we're hanging out, we're going to a club, this thing happens, and momentary explosion of joy where everyone's just really into the moment. It's a really tough thing, because again, there are so many artists throughout time, not just in our modern time, but throughout time, that are lauded. And at the same time, if we knew more about their personal lives, would immediately just say, okay, we got to
Hmm.
put that to rest, and let's focus on other artists that are actually good people too. So
Right.
it's
And that brings me to my next point, because in getting to know you, I discovered quite rapidly that you have a deep passion for film. I mean, I thought I loved movies, but you love
just
movies. Yeah, just a little bit, just a little. I mean, you love them. And so I thought it would be good to talk about, like, where did that passion come from? And then also to let the listeners know just how much education you have in that realm. First off, where did that passion even come from?
I think that passion started both intentionally and unintentionally from my parents. We were very early adapters of VHS. I don't remember not having VHS cassettes in my house. At one point, I think we had like 700 or 800 VHS cassettes. So we had our own little mini Blockbuster. And friends would come over and borrow stuff like we were a library. But I think it really, really formed the first time I went to go and see a movie in the theater. And it was such a vivid memory for me, because I was in preschool. My mom came and took me out of school early, and we ended up going to McDonald's. And I was like, hey, this is awesome. I'm gonna eat chicken McNuggets and have some orange drink and enjoy my day. And my mom was like, no, we're going somewhere else. And I was like, oh, all right. We went to the little strip mall in Stuart, Florida, which is where I was living at the time, and walked into the movie theater. And I was like, this place is kind of cool. I'm like looking around, and the one display I vividly remember was this huge display for Pink Floyd's The Wall, the film that came out a couple of years before. Yeah, this was, I think, 1984 is when the first time I went to the theater, 83 or 84. We walked past the one sheet movie poster for Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock. And I had already seen 1 and 2. I was already a Trekkie by the age of 4. The film started. and that was it for me. Once the stars and then Leonard Nimoy's voiceover popped up, and that was it. I was like, yep, I'm hooked from here on out. But I was also a huge TV junkie, to the point where also around the same age, my parents bought me a subscription to TV Guide, and I would read it and memorize it every week. So
you memorized the TV Guide?
Memorize the TV Guide listings every week. So much so that literally my parents could be in the other room, could yell across the house and say, "Hey, Mac, what's on Thursday night at 8:00 on NBC?" And in my little 4 or 5-year-old voice, I'd go, "Cheers!" And then, although I think the Cosby Show was on at that point. So, but
yeah, someone's going to fact check you.
Yeah, by all means,
right.
if I'm spitting untruths, let me know.
You were the first person to tell me there's a difference between a movie and a film. I had no idea. I thought those were one and the same, and you schooled me on that too.
The way that I look at cinema as an umbrella term, I'll be very, very point blank about it. I think cinema has sort of been co-opted by people that have really high ideals and exalted impressions of themselves. Cinema to me is motion pictures, but specifically when you're talking about something that is feature length and theatrical, or not even theatrical these days, I tend to break it into 2 different quadrants, for lack of a better term. A movie is something that is meant for enjoyment. It's meant for spectacle in the sense of entertainment. It's meant for enjoyment. It's meant for casual viewing. It's meant for an experience, especially if you
like
go
a superhero movie.
Yeah. Whereas a film is something that's meant to explore the art form, or themes at deeper levels, or to really play with the form of cinema in general. And it's taken me years to get to that point, because I definitely was hardcore film snob in my 20s. I readily admit that and own up to it. And anyone who is listening, and I offended during that era of my life, I apologize. I've gotten better as a person.
That's all right. Everyone's a critic at one point in time.
Yeah. So it was just one of those things where it just took me years to get to a place where I felt good watching it from the perspective of, is this meant for enjoyment? And if so, what type of enjoyment am I having? Is this meant to expand the language of cinema? And if so, how is it doing it? And is it doing it well? Something that I'm exploring right now with my dissertation for my PhD is developing a system that is more articulate in telling the potential viewer what the experience that they will have, either going to a theater or clicking something on Netflix. What kind of experience are you going to have beyond numbers or thumbs or stars or letter grades, which honestly don't really carry the weight that they used to, and they don't necessarily tell you what sort of experience you're going to have.
All right, so hold on. You're saying before someone watches a show, you think there should be something that explains what they're going to learn or feel before?
Not necessarily, because some people like myself, I like to interact with critics after I see it, because I like to form my own opinions. But most people are not like me. They want to, I've never asked the waiter how's the soup or what I should order, because it's subjective. Their palate is different than mine. So I think that by creating a system that allows you to interact with the review either before, it can split both ways, because some people like to interact with film reviews before they go and see something, so that they can feel, I guess, more at home with what's going to happen, and use it more as a recommendation tool. While others, like myself, I like to interact with reviews after I've seen it, so that it's almost like a dialogue in a way, or
Mm.
maybe even a dialectic in another way, depending upon how strongly I feel about it. But I think that having a system that allows you to interact with the review, either as a recommendation tool or as a talkback method, I think that's a really positive way to go, as opposed to here's a number, because I can't tell you how many times I've sat in a movie theater and the lights go up after it's done and everyone in their group is talking and they're like, but it got a 92 on Rotten Tomatoes, but I don't, how did it get a 92? I don't get it, blah, 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 blah. It's something where if you are someone who looks at that gauge or any gauge as a means of, okay, they're saying this is good, let me go and see it. The system that I'm developing called Synological is the system that you can use to do that. Or if you want to wait and see it and interact with the review afterwards, then you can totally do that too.
Yeah, I don't like reading reviews before I see the movie because a lot of times they summarize the entire plot. Now I'm not surprised at all. And I just want to go in blank canvas and just experience it. And then talk about it after, for sure.
And I've never been the type of person that goes into a restaurant and asks the waiter what's good, because it's such a subjective experience. Food is so much of life is subjective. But I think if you can bring what I like to call subjective objectivity to film reviews, so that it works both ways, so that if someone wants to know how the soup is today, they can definitely sample that. Or if they just want to pick something off the menu, eat it, and then tell me what their thoughts are.
That sounds awesome. And congratulations on that. I know that's a lot of work.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that. It's coming down the home stretch, so it's taken me a little bit longer than I anticipated, but I have a great support system with my family, my wife, and my advisor, who have been with me every step of the process. And again, the ultimate goal is to get Synological out there so that it is a living, breathing, active theory that you can practice and goes beyond just being a dissertation that gets written, sits on a shelf, and collects dust.
The other day, we rented a movie, not a film, a movie. And 5 minutes in, Rob says, I don't like this. I don't like this at all. Why can't we get a refund 5 or 10 minutes in when you realize, I'm not going to like this? I can already tell the setup and everything. This is just going to be a waste. I already know how this movie is going to end and I want my money back. Like they're just kind of be that little sample that you get because the preview does not do it. It's that first 5 to 10 minutes that pretty much tells you how everything's going to go.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I used to love trailers. Now I don't watch them. The only time that I watch them is when I'm in the theater and watching something and there's no escape.
It's being forced on you.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, that's kind of how it feels sometimes, especially when you have upwards of 7 or 8 trailers before the movie even starts. So it's something that, because of how marketing has evolved and at the same time devolved in certain circumstances, it's kind of frustrating because you get sold on a concept that never actually comes into fruition. And that's when you get utter disappointment, and that's where you get people that are like, how did this get the score that it got on whatever system you're looking at to make that decision as to what you're going to plunk your sometimes in excess of $15 down to see.
Right. So what do you look for in a great film?
You know what? I think I've just kind of let things be what they're going to be. And I think ultimately is, what is the film about and how is it about itself? Different genres are very important, and distinguishing the genres are equally important, because then that really sets the expectation, because every genre has different audience expectations. Having that understanding of, I'm going to watch a John Waters movie over I'm going to watch a Michael Bay movie, they're both wonderful trash in their own ways. But they're nonetheless, it's something that the expectation for each is completely different. And the experience that you're going to have is completely different. And again, those are maybe bad examples to a certain extent. If the motion picture is true to itself and is engaging in some way, shape, or form, be it filled with entertainment or great special effects, or filled with amazing cinematography and or characters that I'd never seen before, I think that to me it differentiates something that is maybe a variation of the same themes or same storylines or plots or whatever, and takes it to a completely different level that creates a situation where you want to experience it more and more. I think it's important to honestly to stay open and in some cases really ill-informed before you go and see something so that you can be
right. And the thought of being surprised, it feels so good. That feeling of when you were a kid and you went into the movie theater for the first time, and we want that feeling again and again and again because it's so magical. And have you been surprised by a film anytime recently?
I have both good and bad.
Okay.
The good, I went and saw Everything Everywhere All at Once. That was directed by the Daniels and just an amazing film. And there have been a handful of films, I would say, over the last 2 to 3 years in particular, that skew very absurd, but have a way of maintaining the absurdity without completely burning you out as an audience member. A couple other films just off the top of my head, Zola is very much like that. It's super, super absurd and dark and utilizes a lot of really strong visuals and scenes that are just like, wow. And then Barb and Star go to Vista Del Mar, which is a lot more on the absurdist comedy tip. But all three of these have similarities in that you used to watch a film that was more absurdist leaning, and it would either be like super, super slow, or it would sort of burn out halfway through and sort of lose that momentum and that steam. But all three of these films, from my standpoint, were able to maintain the energy, but also bring themes and characters that had much more depth. So it wasn't just surface absurdity, which I think doesn't quite work as well as it used to, like especially if you're a Monty Python fan or any of that early absurdist type of humor. So yeah, those are three in particular of late that have really surprised me. And
but those were all in a good way. Were there any in a bad way?
Yes, but I'll be nice. And
okay, all right, that's fine.
I mean, I just real quick, I just went and saw Thor: Love and Thunder, and I gotta be honest, I was a little bummed. I love Taika Waititi. Hunt for the Wilder People is I think probably one of the better comedies of the last decade, and definitely of the 20 teens for sure. And I loved Ragnarok. I think that gave the character as well as the MCU in many respects a jolt in the right direction, especially off of all the Guardians type of hilarity. But Love and Thunder, just to me, it didn't quite stick the landing with a lot of the jokes. While the story was poignant, it kind of got lost in the shuffle of everything else, which was really, really unfortunate. Because again, I know you're not listening, Taika Waititi, but if you are, I absolutely love your stuff.
You don't know.
but yeah, for some reason or another, I didn't connect with it the way that I did with Ragnarok, and the way that I had with so many of his other motion pictures.
I saw the movie Pig with Nicolas Cage. I'm assuming you saw it. What did you think?
Yeah. Pig, I thought was excellent because it's the type of downshift that Nicolas Cage does really well, because he gets super kabuki. with films like Mandy and Wilby's Wonderland and, you know, everything else in between. And I think the good thing is that he's on the other side of the actor for hire place of his career. I mean, he's always done amazing work, you know, even in between the lesser works, for lack of a better term, or the ones that just aren't as openly lauded. But he kind of got into this, you know, these lanes of, I'm either going to do really, really like insane characters where everything is just crescendo, 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 or I'm going to play these lawyery. I think USS Indianapolis is a film that comes to mind immediately, where it's just kind of like, huh? But every once in a while, he does a film like Joe, or he does a film like Pig, where you know, he's able to really, really strip the things that make Nicolas Cage down to their essence and keep it internal. And I think that that's, for me, what made Pig work as well as it did. Because if we did get that super kabuki Nick Cage performance, I think that it wouldn't have been the right choice for, you know, for those moments, especially with that character. And I think he understood.
Yeah, I thought the movie was fantastic. Oh, I loved it. Loved it. And I didn't see a lot of it coming. That's why I liked it.
Yeah.
And it was methodical, though, that the character development, like they're slowly dripping the information out to you. And I get distracted pretty easily, but I was in the whole way, even though it had, I would say, a methodical pace about it.
Yeah, it felt, when I was watching it, it felt like you were, you know, watching a good novel. And
yes,
and sometimes that it can be the kiss of death for a film. But again, because of the character and because of the situation and the scenario and the backdrop of, where was it, Portland, you know, as also kind of a weird character in and of itself. Because of those aspects, it really resonated a lot more than maybe it should have. But in all honesty, I think everyone was clicking on all cylinders with that one. And that rap party must have been pretty fun, because my guess is everyone knew that they were a part of something pretty special.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So it does seem like in film and movies, there's this formula that just won't go away. What do you think cinema is going to be like 10 years from now?
I don't see the theatrical experience going away anytime soon, because, you know, there are still so many people that want that communal experience of going into a dark room and staring at images and reacting to what they're seeing, and, you know, having very personal reactions just due to our experiences. So I don't think that that's ever going to go away. It may wane in popularity here and there. On the whole, it's intrinsic storytelling, and people like to be told stories in whatever way, shape, or form that it is. But it is interesting because with behemoths like Disney, you know, a handful of other studios that may, for the sake of survival, have to join and combine themselves in order to maintain any sort of relevancy and reach as well. I think the landscape's going to change. But, you know, looking at it from the perspective of film history, we've had moments where the monopolies come in and then get deregulated. Vertical integration and everything else has been around since the early days of motion pictures. So it's not going anywhere. And it just has moments where it feels like someone has all of the chips, and then 10 years later, all of a sudden little bits are getting sold here and there, and then kind of normalizes itself again. But definitely have no crystal ball. But I think you're probably going to see way more photorealistic AI productions, you know, especially with the fact that you have things like Real Engine, where you can have photorealistic backgrounds, have a few practical things, and then have someone on a soundstage that looks like they're deep in the Amazon, and it look far more legitimate than and far more tangible a world than, you know, typically we see these days.
The future of cinema is in your hands. You are getting your PhD and you are an adjunct professor. I mean, what are you teaching these students? Because they're the ones that are going to carry the torch forward.
The interesting thing is the majority of the students that I have, especially my screenwriting students, they write very personal stories. They want to tell dramas about their lives and depictions of their lives, if they're thinly veiled or outright autobiographical. So I think that, again, people just want to tell stories, and whatever way, shape, or form that comes, it seems to come a lot from my students, where they want to tell more personal stories, more human stories. That's not to say that there aren't, scripts that are big blockbuster, high concept material, but I think cinema finds a way of balancing itself, and that's what's kept it a predominant art form for over a century now, especially in terms of pop culture awareness and popularity.
Are they writing comedies? Because it seems like there's a lack of comedy out there. And even on Netflix and the other streaming platforms, they'll label something as comedy, and then I'll watch it and think, I didn't laugh once. It just wasn't a drama. It wasn't a horror movie. It was just a movie. It was just a story, but nothing in it was funny. I want to laugh so hard my face hurts. That's not happening for me anyway.
Because what is comedy these days? It's such a difficult definition to pin down. What was comedy and what worked for years and years and years, and now we've had so many world events that have popped that balloon.
I went up to Washington, D.C. I had a gig up there. In fact, it was right when the Supreme Court and all the Roe versus Wade stuff came out. And I was at the Yours Truly Hotel, which is only about 3 miles from the Supreme Court. We're talking like in the shadows of the Supreme Court. The verdict comes out, and I have to go on stage and make everyone laugh. Timing is everything in comedy. And oh my gosh, what am I getting ready to do? Like, what's the audience going to be like? And luckily, they laughed. And people thanked me. They said, this is exactly what we needed right now.
Yes, everyone wants to laugh, but how and what do we want to laugh at as a society?
We should be viewing comedy and humorous stories as like a service to society. People need it.
I think we're probably about another 2 or 3 years away from a real renaissance of, this is what we're going to laugh at. This is what's okay to laugh at and talk about in a funny way. And at the same time, there are still a lot of comedy tropes that will always work because they're just inherently funny. But what
like what? Because I think a big issue with comedy in the past is it was rooted in putting other people down, because people like to feel superior. So the audience laughs because we're putting down somebody. So what are you seeing? Like, what do you think will survive comedy wise 10 years from now? I love the idea of a comedy renaissance. I want to laugh again. I want to see funny content.
Yeah, I think that comedies that are self-reflexive, that make fun of ourselves in a communal way, where it's not ill-intended and it's not mean-spirited, I think that those comedies are evergreen. Be they situational, be they gag comedies, whatever it is. I think that they're probably going to be more dialogue driven. And, again, I think a lot of it is going to depend on the younger generations to figure out what they want to talk about and why is it funny, because it's sort of evolved into very much a meme culture where it's just kind of a chuckle, but it's so ephemeral. It just kind of comes and goes very quickly. But when it's on, it's like white hot. But the sustaining value of it, again, it's questionable. But in terms of timeless comedies, you look at things that have good heart and good intentions, and you say, like I show Bringing Up Baby, and I show Marx Brothers to my students, and they're like, wow, this is funny. Or early Chaplin or Keaton or Harold Lloyd, any of those filmmakers, I show the work, and the students are like, hey, I can find the correlations between this and Rick and Morty. But I think we do. We're living in strange days, and I've been living in strange days for a while. So I think the reason why, for me, absurdity is working so well is because the the films that are coming out that have more of an absurdist lean to them have more of a lighter touch in many respects, but also are concerned about what's happening to these people. And I think that's another part of comedy, is that when you don't really care about these people that you're watching and you're spending an hour and a half, 2 hours with, the jokes aren't going to land the same way, and they're not going to last.
Yeah, that's where empathy comes in, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So you're out there teaching students how to write. Are you also teaching them how to like go to auditions or anything like that?
No, oddly enough, nothing along those lines, because the classes that I teach are either writing, history, or documentary production. So it's something where, again, a lot of people don't know this about me, but I do like documentaries quite a bit. The importance of them and the evolution of the language of documentary over the last 15 years in particular has changed so much. If you watch documentaries that were popular, or even Academy Award-winning documentaries from the 1980s and the 1990s, and then you watch something now, the language has changed dramatically, and I would say more favorably in many respects. I mean, there are still some filmmakers that are absolutely amazing, even back in the 1960s and so on. But yeah, I think that filmmakers have sort of leapt on the Werner Herzog train in wanting documentaries to feel more like narrative films, and to utilize narrative devices and more cinematic storytelling techniques, so that it isn't just like, okay, this documentary is going to wind up on the local PBS and then that's that.
Okay.
So I think that language has evolved in a way that's phenomenal. But no, I don't have like an audition 101 class, because I would be terrible at it.
Do they just think it's the coolest thing ever that their professor is the GEICO Caveman? I mean, does it come up at all?
Now, yes. And again, it depends on what impact that campaign had on them as a child, because that's pretty much, I'm teaching children now. It's weird to look out and be like, I'm twice as old as all of you here. Ha, ha, ha. And they're like, but you're twice as old as all of us. Ha, ha, ha. Joke's on you, pal. First day, I say, if you don't get anything out of this class, you at the very least for the next 5-ish, maybe 10 years, can say, I learned screenwriting from the GEICO Caveman. That tends to put a smile on their face, or whatever class I'm teaching. But yeah, I think there's about a few more years before the students look at me like, what are you talking about? I have no idea.
What did you learn being the GEICO Caveman?
It's funny. I learned how to really just kind of let go when it came to understanding a character and performance and things along those lines. I mean, because I was essentially learning as I went along. I had no formal acting training before I became the Caveman, other than doing local community theater productions when I was in elementary and junior high. I mean, I didn't even do any theater in high school, because I got blackballed from the theater department. But yeah,
why did you get blackballed? You can't throw out stuff like that and not expect me to have a follow-up question. Why did you get blackballed?
I got blackballed because one thing I did in terms of performance back then was I was in show choir. Shout out to my 10 tones. You know who you are. we were a show choir group, so it was song and dance and all that kind of stuff. So naturally, whenever any sort of musical happened at the school, we were going to either get the lead roles or good parts, or at the very least, be in the chorus. And the theater department decided to create a production of the rock opera Medea. And it was a big deal. We were the first high school in the United States to perform the rock opera Medea. And everyone was super excited about it, yada yada yada. And I wanted nothing to do with it. But the head of the choral department was like, I need you on the low end, because I'm a bass baritone when I sing. And he was like, I need you to come and do this. And I lasted 3 days of rehearsals, and I said, I can't do this. The fourth day, instead of going to rehearsal, I went to my friend's JV football game because he was the starting quarterback, and he's like, dude, no one comes to these games. Please, Mac, help me out. I was like, all right, I'll be there for you, man. The stage manager called my house, and my mom answered, and she said, yeah, he's at the football game. And they're like, oh, well, he should be at rehearsal right now. I got home, and my mom said, and this is the first and I think probably only time she's ever said this to me. She said, Mac, I'm sorry. I think I got you in trouble. And then she proceeded to tell me everything that happened. I was like, uh-oh. Cut to the next semester, they're doing a musical that I did want to do, which was Sound of Music. So as retribution, the head of the theater department decided to have me read for 5 roles and then sing 3 full songs. And then a couple days later, when they posted roles, I got nothing.
Oh.
So
wow.
because
petty.
Well, that's the thing is like, I'm just like, wow, okay.
What did you learn being the GEICO Caveman?
I learned that fame is a weird thing. And I learned it very early on. You know, I got the role, and my parents were obviously very excited. And I was talking with them, and my mom was like, son, you could be very famous. And I said to her, I was like, I'm probably not going to be famous, at least not for this. I'm playing a character who is already famous, and I'm just going to do my best to play the character the best way that I know how. And that I think really, like, it kind of put my parents back into, oh, okay, he's not going to be completely nuts in 2 years. So that I think was a moment that I realized it. And then it was, oddly enough, sort of hammered home during my first live event appearance, which was a food and wine festival in Washington, D.C. And the headliner that year was someone that these days is not necessarily looked at particularly favorably, and that's Paula Deen, which is understandable and unfortunate, because getting to know her for the time that I had with her, I was just supposed to do a quick hello before we went on stage for 5 minutes. And that quick hello went from both of us having this mutual appreciation moment to an hour and a half later, she's like, I want you to stay on stage with me the whole time and cook. But during that time that we were talking, she was really interested in the process. And that's one thing that I learned as well, is when I was talking with people who were actually famous, they wanted to kind of cut through the BS very quickly. And they appreciated the gag and the shtick and everything else, but they wanted to get to know me and how I am and how this happened for me and all that kind of stuff. We started to talk like that, you know, just Paula Deen and I, and she stopped me and she said, in a very sincere way, you're lucky. What do you mean? Because you get to put on this makeup and play this character and have so much fun and everybody loves you. And then you take it off. And then you get to just go on about your life and do what you want to do. And no one bothers you. No one says anything to you. And then she stops and she looks at me, and she has the deepest blue eyes I've ever seen in my life. And she looks at me and she says, I can't take my makeup off.
Yeah.
And I was just like, whoa, I did not expect this from Paula Deen. Again, this was like right before we're going on stage, and I'm just concerned that I'm going to be over a hot stove and my makeup is going to start melting off. Like
I'd be concerned of that too.
Raiders of the Lost Ark, you know.
Yeah.
It's just, you know, the prosthetics are you know, they're not entirely stable, especially when you get into real hot heat.
Well, I have a Paula Deen story. Years ago, I was at a conference that was in San Diego, and it was for the American Society of Association Executives. And all of these vendors show up because they know that these association executives are going to bring their conference to their city. And that means all of their attendees and members are going to fly in and stay in the hotel and spend a bunch of money in the city. So people really roll out the red carpet for this particular event. And there was someone representing Savannah, the city of Savannah, and he was giving out Paula Deen spices.
All right.
And I have this hang up where I don't like asking for the free swag that they're handing out because I know it's for real customers. And there was a woman who worked on my team. She didn't care. She'd walk right up, smile at them, and they'd, hand it over. But I'm not a bashful person, as you know, but it's just, I have this hang up where I can't ask them for something that they're giving away for free to hundreds, if not thousands of people.
Yeah.
And so sure enough, he's giving away these Paula Deen spices, and I see Paula Deen's butt rub. And I think I'm a bit of a practical jokester, and I could use this for a couple of gifts in different ways. And I was like, this is kind of funny, with the butt rub. So I said to the guy, can I please have Paula Deen's butt rub? And he says, no, you're another vendor. This is for customers. And I was just completely mortified. And I was like, oh, okay, well, GEICO actually sent their top salespeople to Savannah at one point in time. He goes, oh, let me give you a bunch of pamphlets and all this kind of stuff. And is there someone I can talk to? Maybe they'll have another trip here. And I leaned over. I was like, you didn't give me a butt rub. I'm not coming to Savannah. And I said that right when some people walked around the corner, and that's all they heard. All they heard is me going, you didn't give me a butt rub. I'm not coming to Savannah.
I think that's a fair trade. Let's be honest.
No.
I've been to Savannah, but not for the butt rubs.
Did you meet any other people being the famous caveman?
I met a lot of people, a lot of very crazy situations. I think probably one of the funniest ones and one of the craziest ones was meeting former President Bill Clinton because of just how it all came about. I was at a NCAA basketball game and sitting courtside with George Murison, who was, if any of you are listening and are huge Billy Crystal fans, you know that he is the co-star of My Giant. So if you're an NBA fan, he was one of the more dominant centers for a few years back in the 90s. But he's also incredibly tall. But he is a sweet, sweet man. And we were just talking and hanging out. And again, he just wanted to get to know me and all that kind of stuff because he's like, oh, you were a caveman. Haha. And then we just started talking and enjoying the game. And then he stops me when we were in the middle of a conversation. He says, look, there is President Clinton. There is my friend. And he's pointing at him. And then President Clinton just sort of waves at us. And I'm just like, hi. We get invited to go up to the suite that they're in at halftime. We go up there and all of a sudden the Secret Service bouncers are like, no, you're not getting in. Sorry, we're full. Best of luck to you. And we were a little bummed, but it's the caveman and George Murison. We're just walking around the Verizon Center hanging out. Towards the end of the game, George Murison's son had a basketball game. So he's like, is it okay if I leave? I was like, you're George Murison. You do what you're going to do. And we, shook hands, gave each other a hug and said bye and all that stuff. Towards the tail end of the game, because I wanted to still watch the game because I like sports, they're like, okay, well, we should probably head on out before the game is over. So I was like, okay, cool. We're in the bowels of the Verizon Center. And lo and behold, the GEICO caravan is going this way. And then sure enough, Bill Clinton and his crew are coming this way. So we end up hanging out in the bowels of the Verizon Center. And again, it was another situation where the first minute of talking with him, he just was like, hey, this is great. How long does it take to make the makeup and all that kind of stuff? That's my Bill Clinton. It's terrible. Sorry, Bill.
No, it's great.
He just wanted to get to know me. He's like, so like, what do you do? How did you get to this point? And, all that kind of stuff. So we just started to talk as people. That was one of the biggest things in my travels that I learned is that people that are legitimately famous or celebrities or whatever moniker you want to throw at them, they just want to have normal conversations. They don't want everyone to be on all the time, to be, doing their shtick and that's that. They just want to talk and hang out. And I really found that fascinating. And it was pretty much across the board. Everyone that I encountered that had any sort of fame or social stature, they just wanted they got their chuckle. They asked me a couple questions and then they just wanted to talk and hang out.
Well, I learned something about life when you were the GEICO caveman. I don't think I've ever told you this story.
You tell. So, I'm very curious.
Yeah. Well, okay. All right. Well, you were living in Chicago at the time.
Okay.
and 7-Eleven was giving out free Slurpees. So I know it was July 11th, and you showed up at my hotel, and we walked around the corner to the 7-Eleven, got our free Slurpees. And then we were just like walking around talking. And you said to me, as you were living the life, you had done, I don't even know how many commercials at that point in time. Like, how many of you did you do in total?
I think in total, as far as like national spots, I think I did roughly 25-ish.
Uh-huh.
And then all the live event appearances, and then some regional stuff, and then like stuff that they would play in game and all that. So
Yeah.
uh,
I mean,
yeah,
you had made quite a bit of money at that point in time. And so you were living it up alone in Chicago. And that's like the dream, right? Where everyone goes, oh, you make this money and you don't have to work at like a corporate job, or, you're not working in fast food and all this. Like, you can just relax and love life. And you said to me, it sucks. And I said, what do you mean? And you said, well, no one else is able to hang out because they all have to work. And here I am in Chicago walking, I have free time and I have the money, but I don't have friends that can hang out unless I go somewhere to like LA where they're all, lounging around during the day. They're able to do this, but your average person, my friends, they have to work. They can't go to a movie in the middle of the afternoon. They have to be at their job. And that really hit home with me because, you think, oh yeah, I would love to be able to have this life. And you said, well, that's like, it's retirement where then everyone else is retired and now they can go around on their golf carts and hang out during the day. Like, you look for your peers, people your age, to have the same kind of life. And it's hard to find people that had that life.
yeah. Well, at that point, like I was in the middle of it, so trying to handle it and maintain and all that stuff. And I mean, I would never consider myself, even at that point in time, I would never be like, oh, I was rich and making insane amounts of money. I was doing well, and well enough to not have to have a day job anymore, which prompted my move up to Chicago and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, at that point in time, it was strange because I think I was single then, and I didn't have I didn't have a group of friends because I had just moved to a new place, and I had a few friends up there, which again prompted the move. But again, they all had to work during the day. I got a lot of great, time watching movies on my big screen projector and in my awesome place and all that kind of stuff. There were aspects of it that were really empty, especially in the middle of it, because I didn't have a lot of people that understood what was happening to me at the time, and where I was going, and ultimately what I wanted to do. I think I told someone that I wanted to go back to school, and they're like, why? You're the GEICO Caveman. You should just keep being the GEICO Caveman. I was like, but this isn't going to last. I didn't think it was going to last beyond the first live event appearance that I did. And then all of a sudden I start getting commercials and everything else. And it was kind of crazy how it all started to snowball. But it wasn't like a completely uncomfortable snowball. It was just kind of like, this is interesting. Like I'm sort of watching a snowball come, and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. And then it's like, oh, all right, I guess it's coming. I'll just step out of the way now. The aspirations that I had beyond just playing a popular pop culture character were always to make films and to go back to school and get a PhD ultimately, and that's over the last few years. That's definitely what I've done. Aside from now, having a family of my own and having a son that I get to teach really cool stuff. This month, he's really into the old school Universal monster movies. We've got little action figures of like the Mummy, the Wolfman, and the Invisible Man, and all that stuff. And I think he's the only 3-year-old that I've ever encountered that knows who Boris Karloff is, and who Claude Rains is, and all these guys. So again,
That's
it's
great.
passing on the film geekdom to a new generation for sure.
I think it's fantastic that you're doing that with your son. I mean, those are your building memories, and he's learning so much from you. And what a
Poor
cool kid. Yeah. I'm sorry, what?
I said, poor kid.
No. You inspired me. You might not realize this, but in Chicago, you had this projector and you were talking about your projector and screen. And I thought, I'm going to do that too. And so when I moved down to Florida with my husband, we have this really dark living room. And usually people would try to make it brighter. And instead, I decided to go darker. I came home with a projector and a projection screen. And I was like, we're going to pull out the ceiling fan and we're going to rig this projector here. And he's like, who are you? Like, what in the world's going on? And yeah, now we have this 9-foot projection screen and we've painted the ceiling. Like, we just keep adding to it now. We're like, welcome to our movie theater. And that's really all your fault. Actually, if I ever try to sell the home and I can't because the ceiling's black, it's all your fault.
Well, I didn't tell you to paint the ceiling black, so.
No, we cut holes in it, put in speakers. I mean, we cut holes in the wall and rigged in speakers. I mean, yeah, it's officially a theater. It cannot be anything else at this point.
Are you kidding me? We're looking for houses now. Every once in a while, I find a house that has a theater set up, and I'm like, let's buy it. And my wife's like, no. So I think it's important to be really comfortable and to watch things in as great and intended a way as possible. Having a theater set up and the fact that, at that point I bought my projector and it was cheaper to buy that projector than it was to buy like a 55-inch TV. So I'm like,
right.
Of course I'm going to buy the projector and watch a 20-foot screen and have a good sound system and all that stuff. And especially if you're spending a lot of time watching things, I think it's really important to enjoy what you're watching in an environment that gives you the best experience that you could possibly have.
Yeah. Well, I've known you for 12 years and I learned a while ago that you're kind of a picky eater.
Just a little bit.
Just a little. Maybe I'll just say you're highly selective about what goes in your mouth. That doesn't sound better. Picky eater.
Yeah, these days and most days, yeah.
Many people are obsessed with what cavemen used to eat, and experts will often take fossilized poop or teeth scrapings and insist that they know what the caveman diet is from their findings. And then gym rats and meatheads are always talking about the paleo diet and I don't eat legumes, man, or bread. I just eat meat like the caveman did. And I would like to resolve that argument right here and right now. You are going to tell us what the caveman actually eats. Here we go. Steak.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. Oh, okay. Chicken.
Every day.
Every day? And is there any kind of chicken you won't eat?
Chicken salad.
Okay. So, but chicken nuggets are okay. Chicken salad, definitely not.
Correct.
Fish.
Yes. For some reason or another, bass, I've never really taken a shining to, but
okay.
But most of the other natural forms I'm a fan of.
So the caveman will not eat bass. What about mayonnaise? No mayonnaise.
No way.
Ketchup?
Nope.
Tomatoes. Do you eat tomatoes?
No, I do not. But oddly enough, I don't eat ketchup, but one of my favorite condiments is barbecue sauce.
Interesting. So, will you eat pizza?
Yes, I will eat pizza.
Is there red sauce on pizza?
Yeah, I'll eat some red sauce.
Ketchup is bad, tomatoes are bad, but marinara is fine.
I'm okay with marinara.
All right. Maple syrup.
Absolutely. Love it.
Okay. What about pickles?
No way.
No way. Any kind of pickles?
Anything fermented in vinegar? No way. I see a pickle anywhere on the table, I'll get up and leave.
Yeah, the archaeologists did not pick up on that. So what about the zebra cakes?
Love them.
And potatoes, those are fine?
Love them.
Yeah? What about tacos?
Potato salad.
Wait. Okay, so potato salad and chicken salad are definitely no-go.
I think most types of salad, salads and soups and salads, which of course are some of my wife's two favorite things.
Wait a minute, you don't eat soup?
Nope.
No, any kind of soup?
No soup. No soup.
All of your favorite items in one bowl, you're not going to eat it.
Not a chance.
What's the problem with soup? I don't understand the hang up.
Soup traditionally is hot, and I typically don't like hot things, especially hot liquidy things. I don't like hot coffee, but I do like iced coffee. And again, I'm a contradiction. on so many
Yeah.
different
What about
levels.
gazpacho or
No.
was it vichyssoise? I mean, that's potato. That's cold potato soup.
Yes, and that is not going into my body.
All right. It's the liquid. I'm trying to get to the root cause here. So is
Good luck.
tofu, since you don't eat steak, are you eating tofu now?
No, I mainly just chicken and fish. I'll have tofu every once in a while. I don't love it. I don't dislike it. It just kind of has a very neutral feel for me.
Okay. And then finally, pie.
No, no.
No
There
pie?
are two pies that I will eat, and my wife makes both of them.
And
Um,
they are.
they are chess pie and they are Boston cream pie, and that's it.
What is chess pie?
I can't tell you that. It's a secret recipe.
Okay. All right. Okay, fine. So this mysterious pie that you'll eat is called chess pie and then Boston cream pie, and that's it. No other pie. Pumpkin, forget it. It's not happening.
One of these
So
days.
all this stuff about cavemen not eating carbs, it's a lie. It's totally a lie.
This caveman ate carbs and he enjoyed them and still enjoys them.
We now know what the caveman eats, and everyone can let this whole paleo diet stuff rest. We are moving into the heavy pet peeve segment.
For a second, I thought
What?
you were going to say the heavy petting segment. And I was like,
No,
that's
that's like every
gonna
time
be
I
weird.
struggle. Every time I have to pause and say, don't say petting, don't say petting. And
I
sometimes I
know.
slip up.
Well, I'm disappointed that you didn't this time, which is the reason why I decided to take that liberty.
Maybe I probably should just keep it that way. Just start saying it that way. What are your pet peeves?
People who don't listen in conversations, I think that drives me up the wall. People that don't use critical thought and just sort of accept things without much investigation. And that's another big one for me. People that are messy is another one. Yeah, usually other than that, I'm pretty okay with just about everyone. But if I find out any of those three things, it's going to be a bumpy ride.
Are you the type of person that soaks your dishes or do you wash them right away? Since we're talking about messy.
It is a mixture of, I usually wash them, much to my wife's chagrin, scrubbing and cleaning them before I then put them into the dishwasher. And she's like, well, why are you doing that? Because sometimes I just don't have faith in dishwashers, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I think
I do that too, and it drives my husband nuts. It's like, you can just put it in the dishwasher. And I'm like, yeah, but then you get little food bits on different things. But our dishwasher broke, and the repair person came out and said, you have some soap buildup because there's not enough oil to counteract the soap. And so she made me pour oil into the dishwasher to make it dirty so that the soap could then work.
That is wonderfully counterintuitive, and now I know a little bit more about the dishwasher than I did before. So thank you for telling me and for
You're very welcome.
Me. No, I think it's important, you know, because you're learning so much about me. I think it's important that I learn not so much about you, but about the dishwasher.
I appreciate that.
I think what I'm going to do now is I'm going to revert back to a very like 5-year-old mentality where we get a dog and we just let the dog lick the plate clean and then put it right back in. Because again, dogs' mouths are clean. So and that we're saving water, we're saving electricity, we're being better stewards to the earth. All of these things are very important to me.
Now we're going to head into some questions that I wrote for the Very Interesting Game or the Very Interesting Game show. And as a reminder, no politics, no religion, no ad nauseum topic du jour. And we're not going to Google the answer. I'm looking for ridiculous and interesting and creative answers instead. Are you ready?
Is all you're going to get from me is ridiculous and slightly creative.
Let's go. We are traveling on a spaceship together for 1 year. What amenities should our spaceship have for us?
How big is the spaceship?
Yeah, that's a very good question. It is huge. It's as big as New York City.
That's a pretty big spaceship. Well, I mean, the obvious answer would be a movie theater.
Okay.
But the real answer would be our families, and the silly answer would be hoverboards.
Hoverboards. I like that.
Yeah.
Scientists have figured out how to unboil a hard cooked egg. What else should they figure out how to undo?
Why the world doesn't have hoverboards yet.
Okay. The hair on honeybees' eyeballs helps them detect humidity, determine how the wind is blowing, and pick up extra pollen. Pick a weird place to grow hair on your body and give it a fascinating function besides just being hair.
I would say the palm of your hand.
Okay.
And the reason for it is because when you shake someone's hand or give them a high five or pat them in an office appropriate way on their shoulder, you can then truly understand the essence of that person.
Oh, I was thinking that you were getting ready to say there was some sort of medical device, like it blocks bacteria from actually touching your hands. So you're shaking hands with somebody and it's still sanitary.
So yeah, it's like perma sanitary.
Yes.
Yeah. No, that would be weird. I mean, you could style it. You can use gel.
You can style the hair on your hands with gel.
Absolutely. I think that's essential. Function is one thing, but having style is another. If you're bald, then you've got a new place to style and to show off your hair.
Your hand hair.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. Next up, it recently snowed chocolate in a Swiss town. What would you like it to rain or snow?
When it comes to, first of all, my graduate school is in Switzerland, so I've seen it actually snow chocolate before, which a lot of people don't understand is actually a thing. It's not. I'm kidding.
Apparently, the reason why it snowed chocolate is because the Lindt chocolate factory, their ventilation system backfired and spewed cocoa dust all over the whole town.
Mm-hmm. Which, again, I wish that I was there for that because that would have been a fun day. I would want it to shower compliments.
Shower compliments. I love that. That is the best answer I've heard so far. And I have asked this question to hundreds of people. So you get an A+, Professor.
Yay! I just want to warm fuzzy to everybody.
Okay, the next one. An Irish woman married and divorced a pirate ghost who was a few hundred years older than she. Why didn't the marriage work?
This is too funny. First of all, I'm offended because I'm Irish, and there's that. The marriage didn't work because I guess maybe the ghost just wasn't there for her.
I love it. I've heard that he ghosted her. The next question. The Benedictine monk Dom Perignon spent a lot of time trying to remove bubbles from champagne. What did he have against bubbles?
Now, this question is interesting because when I think of bubbles and drinks, my brain immediately goes back to 1989 when I went and saw the Yahoo Serious motion picture classic Young Einstein, because in that film, Yahoo Serious, who is tragically underrated on so many different levels, he played Einstein. And Einstein, in this iteration, created many things. But what he did most was he created bubbles in beer. So that's where my brain goes with this question, because I know Dom. I met him in my travels, and he's a good guy, and he did his best. They've exploited this unfortunate crusade of his for far too long. So I'm refusing to answer this question because I know Dom, and because immediately my brain goes to Young Einstein and Yahoo Serious, who is also unfortunately maligned in this case.
All right, we're going to move on to the next question. Herring communicate with each other by farting. What messages do you wish you could deliver with a fart?
It's not a wish. It's actually what happens every morning. And that is, I know that I'm going to have a good day when I am just waking up and just let it rip. My wife has given me a pet name, and I'm not ashamed to say what it is because it is who I am. But my wife's pet name for me is Tooties. And the reason why is because very early on in our relationship, we had just moved in together. rather than maybe be a polite partner, I would just, first thing in the morning, I know I'm going to have a good day when I let a good fart out.
It's part of your routine?
It is. I mean, skincare, fitness regimen, farting. It's essential. That's how I know that things are going to be good and it's going to be a phenomenal day.
So you come from the school of thought that farting in front of loved ones shows them that you care.
Yes. Not only about them, but about myself. And I think it starts inside and then it must exude. Otherwise, if not everything's right in here, how are you going to be right to everyone else?
I know people that have been in relationships, romantic relationships, or married for decades that have never farted in front of the other ever. They will excuse. They claim to be, and they excuse themselves and go into another room, let it out, and then come back. Like they have never shared that smell, and they certainly would never do that in front of the other person ever. And they swear by it. They think that keeps the romance alive.
One of the greatest literary works of the 20th century is a little book called Everybody Poops. Mm-hmm. And if you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. It is a work of genius that I think will stand the test of time on so many different levels. But at its core, it's very simple because the message is everybody poops.
And the last question of the day, which is asked on every episode, what should have been invented by now?
Hoverboards.
No, you're not allowed to have hoverboards as an answer.
Listen, no. Everyone had an uncle that worked at Mattel. I did not, but I knew many, many kids over the years, many people, many, many humans that had an uncle that worked at Mattel. And every Christmas, a hoverboard was about to come out. It never did. And the hoverboards that are around now, I don't call those things hoverboards. They're not real. It's just wheelies. They're little wheelies. I call them wheelies. They're not hoverboards. Hoverboards are legitimately, it's you on a board, and then there's air, and then there's ground. And then you can go to wherever you want. You can hitch yourself onto the back of a pickup truck if you feel confident and comfortable in doing that, and you get the consent of the driver beforehand. I think that's, again, these are all very important things. So I'm sticking with hoverboards.
Okay. All right. I'll let it go. How can folks get in touch with you?
You can't. It's strictly, no, I'm kidding. No, I have a website. If you are at work and you want to pretend like you're looking at something interesting, you can go to McManusWoodend.com and look at things that I've done and or might do in the future and or are currently doing. And you can also say hello that way. You can do, if you want to keep it business professional, you can find me on LinkedIn. You can also just Google me and find me. I think the best part about it is that I am the only McManus Woodend on the planet Earth right now and maybe ever. So I'm pretty easy to find from a digital perspective. But I am very good at hide and seek. So if you try to find me in real life, I know where to hide effectively.
All right. Do you have any last words of advice to the listeners about following their passion?
Just follow it. The worst thing that can happen is all of a sudden you're the GEICO Caveman.